Welcome, everyone, to Revenue Rockstars. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you've tuned into all 10 sessions, we just wanted to say welcome. This is a series that is all about revenue and revenue rockstars, and whether you're a marketer or a sales professional, driving that revenue for your business is what this series is all about. We've brought you a bunch of different episodes this year, and I'm really excited to bring you this new one. My name is Greg Bond, and I'm the head of revenue over at SharpSpring by Constant Contact. We were recently acquired, and so got to be adding that Constant Contact from Constant Contact at the end of the SharpSpring logo here. And today I am joined by Drew McLellan. Sorry, Drew McLellan. He owns and runs the Agency Management Institute, which is a consultancy for agencies that's been helping owners grow since the early 90s. He's often quoted in Entrepreneur Magazine, the New York Times, CNN, Business Week, and he's a best-selling author of 5 different books, including one that he recently released called Sell with Authority, that's going to come in handy here today as we talk about selling like a rock star, and that the results should speak for themselves. Welcome, Drew. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Before we kick off into our topic today and into this content, I just wanted to remind everyone, that we launched this series so that agency principals can get new tips for driving results for their clients, and so that SMB marketers and marketing leaders can learn new ways to drive leads and revenue for their business. We define a revenue rock star as a marketer or agency leader that prioritizes the entirety of the customer journey, right? A full funnel marketer, someone who thinks in a comprehensive, full funnel way to drive measurable results for their clients or their business. The qualities that make someone a revenue rock star are also the qualities that would make somebody an excellent salesperson, and vice versa. So, my background, I come from customer success and a long list of sales management jobs. And I'm really excited that we get to kind of dive deeper into this topic today here with Drew about really, new business and business development for agencies, growing your agency business, and growing your revenue. So Drew, with that, I'd love for you to, kind of jump in here and talk about what are the foundational sort of marketing skills and those how do those relate to making a good salesperson?
It's interesting because for so many of us, we don't like the word sales. We don't like the idea of being a salesperson. And the great news is that I think that's changed. I think, I work with hundreds of agencies every year and still in my own agency. And the way we sell today is so different than the way we sold back when I started my agency almost 30 years ago. The good news is selling today is helping. It's helping and educating. And so if you just enjoy being helpful and you enjoy making somebody better at their job every single day, that's selling today. And so I actually think it's easier to sell, but I think the consistency is more important. And so you were talking about sort of full funnel. Now we have to be really consistent in our presence so that we are constantly being seen as someone who's being helpful, because what we're really doing is we are attracting a community around us who wants to learn from us, and a subset of that community is going to buy from us. That's selling today.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious because you've been running agencies, working with agencies for more than 25 years now, and you've seen all these different changes in the industry and how it's evolved over time. I mean, is this a new thing? Is this different than what it was previously, or has it kind of always been this way?
I think technology makes it an easier thing. So I think, so I remember, I'm totally aging myself now, but this has been the philosophy that we've had at my agency from the beginning. So we started a weekly newsletter that we sent out on a fax machine. Like we'd start the fax machine when we'd leave Tuesday night and we'd come back and it would be still running Wednesday morning. So I don't think it's new, but I think technology makes it so much easier today to be found, to be present, to be consistent, to be on multiple channels so people can find you wherever they hang out. So the word content marketing and all the things that we buzz around today, those words may be new, but I don't actually think the strategy is new. I mean, I think, we've seen over and over, you look at Edelman's Trust Barometer or any of the big studies, people want to do business with and to learn from somebody who looks a lot like them and subject matter experts. So when you step into your expertise, whatever that is, as an agency owner or a business leader, when you step into that expertise and you teach from that position, people gravitate towards that. I don't think that's new.
Right. I mean, it's the trust thing, right? I mean,
right, absolutely.
Especially when you're dealing with professional services industry like an agency is, people are typically buying
nothing.
Right? They're buying
no tangible thing.
There's nothing tangible. Yeah, they're buying advice, right? They're buying your expertise, and they've got to be able to trust that you can deliver on that, right?
Right. And part of what they want to trust is that you understand their world, which is why sort of niching down and specializing is so critical today. 2, they want to know you know more than 3 things. So if you only have the same 3 things that you put in your pitch deck or whatever, but you're not constantly sharing and teaching, the trust is a little thin there, right? But if I've been following your podcast or your newsletter or whatever for a year, and you're consistently delivering value, for that period of time, I now can have a depth of trust that you really know your stuff.
Right. And it's the consistency over time and the multiple deposits, right? And I think in order to do that, you have to be a little gracious with your time and your expertise. You have to sort of give it away early and often, right?
Yeah. So that's one of the conversations I have with agency owners all the time. They're like, well, I don't want to give away the secret sauce. And I'm like, I hate to break it to you, but it's not that secret. And you can, and it's sort of like when you go to a restaurant and you have a great meal and you ask the chef for the recipe. That doesn't mean you don't go back to the restaurant to eat the way they cook it again. Right. So it's the same thing when we dole out little bits of what we know. So in essence, we're giving them one ingredient of the recipe at a time. It doesn't mean that A, they can cook it, or B, they want to cook it. But what it means is we've proven that we know the ingredients and we're so confident in our ability to deliver that we're willing to give away the secret sauce. I actually think that's one of the things that is most attractive is when you don't hold back and you give away everything you've got. What that says to somebody is your well is so full that you can give it all away and still have more. So I think it just builds confidence.
Yeah, and I think using that same restaurant analogy, which I think is really interesting. It speaks a lot to even retention, right? Like if once you get a new customer, if what you're giving them is the consistent meal every time, it's going to be good. No matter what you order off the menu, it's going to be good because you're dealing with an expert chef or whatever. You'll go back to that restaurant over and over again. But if you go once and you have one good meal and you come back and it's not a good meal and it's inconsistent, hey, maybe you think twice about going back to that restaurant in the future.
Or if the restaurant's open on Monday one time, but you go back on another Monday and they're closed and they have just a handwritten sign, you're like, I don't trust that anymore. Like they're not consistent. And consistency is where one of the places I think where agencies and marketing leaders fall flat. So what happens is that's important but not urgent, and so all the urgent stuff gets in the way. And the weekly newsletter or the monthly newsletter goes out 5 times a year. The podcast that's supposed to be every week, maybe it's 2 episodes a month. We just don't honor our own commitments. And what that says to the prospect is, geez, if you can't do that for yourself, how are you going to do that for me? Right.
Right.
So it actually builds a lack of trust. So if you're going to go out there and do something, you have to be consistent about it, or don't promise you're going to do it.
For sure. It's great. And I'm curious, looking back at at 2021, now that we're in 2022, but looking back at the last year and kind of assessing what's happened in the world and where marketing is today, are there any sort of lessons learned or key takeaways that you can look at from last year that you'd want to, something maybe tactical or even from your book that you'd say, hey, if you're a marketer today, an agency today, you need to be doing this?
Yeah, a couple things. Number one, it is about, I think one of the ways agencies shoot themselves in the foot is they think they have to produce all the things on all the channels, as opposed to, you know what, pick one big meaty thing, a podcast, a video series, whatever it is, that you can then slice and dice into tiny little pieces. Because for all of us, the consistency challenge is real. How do I keep producing good content and take care of clients and, you know, not work 24 hours a day? So that's one thing. I saw a lot of agencies scrambling to produce more than they could honor for a long period of time. Number two, I just wrote about this in our newsletter. I think 2021, a lot of agency owners in particular, because that's my expertise, that's my world, really led their business from a place of fear. You know, we were afraid of COVID. Then we were afraid of clients ditching us because of COVID. Then we were afraid we were going to lose our employees. And then we had to bow down to ridiculous, you know, a lot of agencies had a ton of turnover and the cost of new employees was so high compared to what we were used to paying. And so then current employees would come and ask for something and we felt like we couldn't say no because we couldn't afford to lose them. And it just feels like everything has been fear-based. And I think we've got to get to a point where we start running our business from a place of confidence and conviction again. And I'm not saying we don't take into account all of those risks, which are real, but I do think we have to get back to running our business, especially around new business. And because the other mistake people made was if anybody walked in the door with a bag of money, they took it, whether they were a good client fit or not. And we've got to be much more discerning about both employees and clients. So I'm hoping 2022 brings that discernment and that courage back to folks.
Gosh, I love that you were talking about with the discernment around clients and, you know, somebody comes in with a bag of money and asks you to do a bunch of things. Can you dive in a little bit deeper into that one and talk about, gosh, what are the risks there? I mean, it's so tempting, right? It's so tempting to take that bag of money, but
Absolutely.
Why is that a bad idea?
Well, we all know it's a bad idea. We've all done it, right? Every one of us has done it. And you get that little pit in your stomach as they're signing the purchase agreement or the whatever. And you're like, this doesn't feel awesome. I'm not sure we're going to be able to deliver this. So here's what happens. We take somebody's bag of money to do something that's outside of our wheelhouse or outside of our expertise. And then to keep them happy, and so we get to keep the bag of money, we scramble like crazy to try and figure out how to do what we said we were going to do. And we burn through a bunch of hours. We probably don't do it super well the first time, which means we have to go back and do it again. And at the end of the day, we actually ended up paying money to take that bag of money. Almost always. So every agency, when we start working with them, one of the things we have them do is we have them look through their client list. We have them look at the profitability by client. And without exception, every agency has clients on their roster that they knew very well they shouldn't take, that they literally are paying for the privilege of serving that client because they were a bad fit from the beginning and they didn't honor their own sort of inner gut warning. And I get it. You want to make payroll, you want to have cash flow. I totally understand why we make that mistake, but it's always a mistake.
Right. And for professional services businesses like an agency, I mean, your largest source of new business typically is word of mouth. It's referrals from the customers that you've made happy in the past, right? And
Yep.
If you're not doing a bunch of new business outreach and you're not growing, even if you are, right, you could be acquiring customers, but you're going to lose them because you're not serving their needs, right? So,
and by the way,
it's a double-edged sword.
They talk too.
Yeah.
So now instead of good word of mouth, now you have bad word of mouth, and that is a killer.
It's a killer. It's a killer. So
the other thing that happened at the end of 2021, and this happens every year, by the way, this isn't a 21 phenomenon, but agencies are cooking and they're chasing business until around Thanksgiving. And then we fall into the same habit that everybody else does, which is the holidays are coming. We're trying to wrap things up for clients. And all of a sudden, our activity level really goes dormant. And our activity level stays dormant until probably next week. So we've literally gone 4 to 6 weeks and our pipeline has not heard from us, or they've gotten the cheesy Merry Christmas message that they got from everybody, but we're not actually doing our job. We're not selling, we're not helping, we're not teaching. And then we think, I wonder why the first quarter is soft. Well, the first quarter is soft because we let it go too long without nurturing. Again, it's back to that consistency. So it's a little late in the conversation now, but what I will say to everybody who's on is get something out this week. Get back on the horse. Get back to doing the things that you know. Create community, create connection, create sort of this mutual understanding of each other. Get back on it and figure out what you're going to do for 2022 that you're going to lock in and be consistent, because they haven't heard from you in a while. And that silence dissolves the connection.
Yeah. And so do you have some, I don't know, some hyper tactical, you talk a lot about the consistency of outreach and new business and getting people into your funnel, but like, what are 3 or 4 consistent things that somebody could do right now today? Start today if they've been, off for the last 6 weeks. What can we start today to start pushing that new business funnel
it's
forward?
A golden oldie, but weekly or monthly newsletter is a great tool. But most agencies do it backwards. So I don't want to hear about your new employees. I don't want to hear about your recent television commercial. I don't want to hear about any of that. What I want you to do is make me better at my job today. So your lead article has to be something that teaches me something. And then if 2 or 3 articles down or 2 or 3 bullet points down, you want to tell me about whatever's happening in your agency, fine. But first, you have to earn the right to be in my inbox. And you earn the right to be in my inbox by making me better at my job. So most agencies need to flip their newsletter on its head and always start with the teaching. And then the self-promotion stuff can be, down towards the tail end. So yeah. E-newsletters are a great tool. I think if you have niched your agency and you really do have a subject matter expertise, and by the way, I'm not talking like healthcare. Healthcare is not a niche. Healthcare is a ginormous industry, but pharma products for women over 50, that's a great niche. So if that's where you specialize in, the new business is so much easier the more narrow your audience, because that you can be hyper helpful, right? If I know that everybody who gets my newsletter or listens to my podcast or, whatever, follows me on social is marketing pharma products for women over 50, I can be really specific in what I teach and what I talk about. If it's healthcare, well, now 9/10 of what I share isn't going to hit the mark for most of the audience. So, podcasts are great, but they're only great if they're hyper focused. And, there's cost, there's time investment in that. So, the newsletter is a great one. I've seen some people really, really do great work on LinkedIn where they're just sharing insights on LinkedIn. They're not producing anything. They're just typing in their thought for the day or their tip for the day. But again, if it's helpful, then they build a huge following. So it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to take a lot of time to produce. It just has to be helpful. And so the caveat to this is, before you hit the send button, publish button, whatever button it is, you need to ask yourself, is what I'm about to share going to make my prospect better at their job? Am I reminding them of something they already know? Am I teaching them something new? Am I giving them a new view on something maybe that they've heard before? Am I being helpful in some way? And if the answer is no, then don't hit the button.
Yeah, for sure. Being helpful, right? But there's something that you've said in there a couple of times about targeting, right? Like targeting the right customer, the right niche, or making it small. You got to make sure you're talking to those people who can benefit the most from you. So I'm just sort of assuming and jumping to a conclusion here, but it's the way it works in our business as well as any other business that I've worked with or advised. Is you've got to know your customer. You've got to narrow it down. You've got to know them so well that you can speak in their language, right? So talk a little bit about that. Like, how do you choose that niche, or how do you narrow in on it, and then how do you become that subject matter expert to be able to serve them well?
Yeah, it's one of the hardest parts of this, and it's counterintuitive, right? When you say to a business owner, "Hey, of all the millions of customers you could have, I want you to narrow down to 10,000 potential customers." Business owners freak out. They're like, "What are you talking about? All these other people have money." But the beautiful thing is, and the analogy is a simple one. We would not drive by 10 general practitioners to get a flu shot. but we'll get on a plane and go to Mayo when we have a brain tumor. Same thing. People won't care about your geography. They won't care about your pricing. All of a sudden, you become the sought after expert, and they're willing to do what they need to do to work with you. So first of it is the mindset of accepting that narrowing down your prospect pool is actually the most financially brilliant thing you can do. Number one. Number two, you're not making up a niche or a specialty out of the blue. You already have it, and it's among several that you have. So we actually created a tool, and I'll give you the URL. It's agencymanagementinstitute.com/ and then all one word, niche criteria. And what it is, it's just an Excel document. And it invites you to list 5 potential areas of specialty. And then along the left, it asks you to grade yourself on criteria that make it a good niche or not. And then at the end, you basically just get a score, and you're going to see by the scores where your strength is in terms of niching. And it really can be that simple if you have the courage to narrow down.
Awesome. And I want to mention that we are going to open this up for questions here for our audience that's listening. And so if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Wherever you're watching, go ahead and chat those in. But before we get to those questions, I did want to ask another one, Drew. And if I'm an agency listening to this, and I'm not doing thought leadership today, I'm not out there on these platforms, positioning myself as a subject matter expert, what are some of the things that I can do to kind of get started, to jump in and really start investing in this as a strategy that works?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that, again, this gets back to your question of, is this new? The reality is our clients today are out shopping for agencies way before we know they're out there. And the way they're shopping is they're online, and they're looking for experts. So if you're not doing it, you have to understand that if you bump into a prospect who's finally ready to actually talk to agencies, 75% of their buying decisions already been made, and you haven't made the cut. So maybe you've been a referral or something else, but they've already been soaking in somebody else's content. They've already been soaking in somebody else's smarts. So you're behind the 8 ball. So, and the other thing is, thought leadership is not writing a blog post about the new Pantone color of the year. That is not thought leadership. That is the same blog post that 10,000 other agencies wrote when Pantone announced that it was whatever purple it is this year. So you have to be really judicious about how you define thought leadership. And again, it's about being a subject matter expert. And so some of the ways you can do that are start going through all of the material you already have, pitch decks, proposals, things that you've written to clients, even emails, reports. You have a ton of content that is going to be valuable, and it's already been produced. You may have to polish it up a little or put it in a different format, or just start journaling every day. So one of the things people will say to me is, I do like 2 weekly videos, and people say, Drew, how do you know what to put in the videos? I just think about what I talked about that week with some client. And I figure if one person asks the question or wants to talk about it, it's relevant to other people. Because again, my audience is so narrowly niched that I know that if, Joe from Boston asked the question, then Mary from California wants to know the answer too. And I think the other thing, the mistake we make is, it does not have to be the Mona Lisa of content. It can be a 1-minute video blurb that just says, hey, here's a little fact that some of you have probably forgotten. Or has your tax guy told you about this common deduction for agency owners, or whatever it is. It does not have to be people. You don't have to have people sit back in their chair and go, oh my gosh, I had no idea that was a thing. You just have to be helpful. So I think you also have to take some pressure off of yourself about the depth of knowledge you share on a regular basis. It's far better to share a little bit on a more consistent basis than to write the 35-page white paper twice a year.
Right. And I think that, again, that goes back to that consistency, right? If you are positioned as the consistent person who's offering help, and I like what you said about the Pantone color, right? How helpful is that really, right? Like, how helpful is that? Like, really think about the things that your niche are dealing with And what are the customers that you want to be customers, the prospect, your ideal customer profile? What are they worried about? What are they concerned with? And hand them that content. Going back to that, just relevancy and consistency, right?
Well, and it goes back to what you said. It goes back to what you said. The better you know them, the more helpful you can be. And so, the other thing I would say is one of the criteria on our niche criteria is, do they gather someplace? Like, is there a conference or a trade show or something, someplace online where you can just go and hang out with them and have conversation over drinks and eavesdrop and just learn what they're talking about, because that'll give you a year's worth of content right there.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm assuming it's the same in all industries, right? But if you go into these conversations from a selling position, I'm trying to sell you something, as opposed to going in from a position, like you said, of authority. I'm trying to help you solve a problem.
Right.
It's just a very different.
I'm going to give it
dynamic.
to you for free, right?
Right.
Yeah, if you walk around and you're handing out business cards and saying, just want to see if you have any projects that you need help with this year, that is the equivalent of going to a cocktail party and having the insurance guy find you, right? You're like figuring out the excuse to have to go to the bathroom or crawl under the table or do anything to get away from them. We don't want to be that. But when you show up, that's the amazing thing. The very people who will dodge your calls and your emails when you're selling, when you invite them to learn and you offer them content that's helpful, that's genuinely helpful, they will white label you in a heartbeat, and they will read you first every week, and they will send you notes. I mean, one of the ways I know when my content is resonating with the audience is how many responses I get to a newsletter where people will say to me all the time, they'll go, "Are you bugging our conference room?" And I'm like, "No, but I hang out with people just like you every day. And so I know what you're worried about. I know what you're thinking about, but I promise no electronic listening devices have been involved." And anybody can do that by just having a narrow enough audience and paying attention.
Yeah. I mean, this is great stuff. And I know we're coming up on time here. You and I could go on and talk about this, hours upon hours. But I want to hit at least one, question from a listener here who's on right now. And the question is, was 2021 a growth year for marketing agencies? And what do you think 2022 will be?
Yeah. So for many agencies, so again, we see the full financials of our clients. And so I can tell you with confidence that, hundreds of agencies, 2021 was a growth year for them. Absolutely. The biggest challenge was a lot of you were actually trying to put the brakes on new business because you were having such a hard time staffing that you were afraid you wouldn't be able to meet the need if you won the business. So I do believe the great resignation is coming to kind of winding down. And I do think that our agencies anyway are having an easier time in the fourth quarter than they have all year to find talent, to hire them at a reasonable price and all of that. So I do think over the next 3 months, we're going to see the rest of that sort of dissipate. We'll get back to being able to fully staff the way we want to, whether that's with employees or contractors. So I think the only barrier last year for a lot of agencies growing even more than they did was the fact that they just weren't staffed to service it.
Awesome. And for 2022, you think things are going to change and look up? And what are some of your, projections or forecasts for what 2022 is going to look like?
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason why an agency who has their ducks in a row can't grow 10 to 20% easy, and I'm talking AGI, so which is our measurement. So gross revenue might be a little higher than that because your cost of goods have to come out, but there's no reason for us not to be able to grow at that level. And I think for a lot of agencies, they're not losing a lot of clients right now. Clients aren't really in the mood to move around as much. So I think you're going to land more new business, and I think you're going to keep more of the clients that you have. And I think you're going to have a better time servicing them because you'll finally be able to staff up. So I think for a lot of agencies, 2022 will feel like a breakthrough year after the last couple of years of sort of challenges. And by the way, there will be challenges in 2022. And I know that, we're still dealing with COVID and all of that, but the reality is most people are back to business like normal. we've been teaching live workshops for a year. Trade shows are coming back. Conferences are coming back. And so some of it's personal choice. Are you ready to go and engage in all of that? But those opportunities are there. And so when you think about all of the ways that you can go to these gathering places and create relationships and learn more about what your prospects care about, 2022 should be a great year for that.
This is awesome. This is great stuff. I'm going to have to wrap this up, but Drew, hang around. I want to give you the last word here before we sign off.
Of course.
But thank you so much for all the content that you've given us today. And just want to let everyone know that you can still sign up for the series if you haven't yet. On that sign up for the series, you can also book a demo to get a look at SharpSpring and see what we have to offer. You can go to sharpspring.com/revenue rockstars to do all of that, sign up for the series and book a demo right there. Our last session of Revenue Rockstars is coming up in 2 weeks. We'll have Jay Bear on here. And we're going to be wrapping up this series and talking about key lessons that we've learned from the entire series through that. We're also, Jay and I are going to be on there. We're going to be doing a big prize giveaway. We've been giving away, concert tickets on this series throughout the series. The last concert ticket giveaway will happen on that last episode of Revenue Rockstars in 2 weeks, January 19th, 2 p.m., me and Jay Bear. And you can actually double your chances of winning if you follow SharpSpring on LinkedIn, tag SharpSpring in your post, or use Revenue Rockstars, hashtag Revenue Rockstars in the post. So please go ahead and head over there and do that. So Jay, I just talked about Jay.
I like being Jay's opening act. That makes me happy. He was one of the keynote speakers at our Build a Better Agency Summit last year, and he just you couldn't end with a better, smarter guy.
He's great.
He's awesome.
We love Jay around here. So Drew, why don't you go ahead and give us the last word here today? Talk to us about give us a little bit of encouragement about how to go out and sell with authority here in the next year.
Yeah, I think there's nothing but blue sky ahead for us. And all you have to do is help consistently. Honest to God, that is it. Help consistently to a narrow audience, be relevant and meaningful to them, and you will build a community that comes around you, wants to learn more from you, brings other people into the community, shares your content, and a subset of those people, I promise you, will fall over themselves to give you money. You don't even have to pitch. You don't have to sell. You don't have to promote. All you have to do is be super smart and helpful, and you can grow your business by 10 to 20%. It really is that simple. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I can't tell you how many agencies I've seen do it time and time again. So that's all you have to do.
Get out there and make it happen, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, Drew.
You bet. My pleasure.
All right.